Hello everybody and welcome to another week of Tryhard Tuesdays. I am your host, the Grand Wazoo, here with my co-host, Mr. Blue 22. How you doing, Mr. Blue?
I'm pretty good. Just enjoying, taking in all the flames I'm getting from Roland on the Monday show. No.
Yeah, you're getting flamed?
Oh, yeah. He's giving me shit about my style of Tryhard Dota. That's why he's not on the Tryhard show, you know?
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. We've had a lot of discussion about that, him and I. We have very different philosophies about the game, but when it comes to our flaws in the game, we're very, very similar. We're both very hard-headed, hard to adapt at times. What was the content of the show about, their show?
They were just shooting the shit, and then all of a sudden it came out as like people that like they enjoy or don't enjoy playing with, and he compared playing with me to like boot camp, like Dota boot camp, and I was like, all right, I get behind that. I mean, you know, it's like sometimes you ask someone like, "Oh, why'd you do that?" And he's like, "I don't really know." I'm like, "All right, well, maybe you should do that. That sounds like that could work."
Maybe you should do something that you know why you're doing it.
Or yeah, or like, there's the people that like you ask like, "Oh, how come you're building that item?" And it's not even like attacking them, but they're like, "Well, because if I build Aghanims, it does more damage." I'm like, I mean, I know what Aghanims does as an item, but like, I agree that that's also what that item does. That's very true. But why do that? And it's like, oh shit, okay.
It's a post-holiday hangover here at .p, as you can see, and the holidays have ended, and the families start to fight, and .p is no exception.
We come together, and then we're like, all right, enough of the fucking that guy.
Enough with the hugs and shit.
Well, as we say that, of course,
goodwill and such.
We also have like the highest win rate of. I have the highest win rate with playing with him as well. So it's like a love-hate relationship in game with Roland. So it always ends up working out. But
Roland's like that guy like Kylo Ren, kind of.
And, please. Okay. Elaborate.
Okay, and you want to force him down a certain path, but you can't necessarily do it. And bad things could happen when you try to. And he's also very snotty in his way. So that's Roland for you.
You gotta let him think he figured it out on his own.
Yeah.
And
then when he gets there, you're like, finally.
He did.
Finally, he's not feeding anymore.
That's my boy. It's
like he stays on the bike.
Exactly. You made that analogy, that bike analogy, where it was like I was like the dad watching him try to like get off the training wheels and kind of freaking out. I think it's a very good analogy. I think it's very apt to how I feel about our relationship.
You guys have like a 70% win rate together.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah,
so like why he's snarkily like you guys are winning games. I don't know. Maybe that is some creative relationships with some people. And I've seen it before. You know, you have to have that friction to make good work or something. You know?
Simon and Garfunkel, you know.
Yeah, I guess so.
As long as I'm not Garfunkel, I'm okay with this.
Hey, that's a really hard. Give my brother Garfunkel. Give him. I don't know.
He's been Garfunkeled officially as of Tryhard Tuesdays.
So
we're rambling.
We're rambling, but we've done a lot of fun stuff over the holidays. We're still kind of getting back into the swing of things. We're going to be working on format changes and different things with the show. But let's get into the topic of the show. And actually, first we're kind of supposed to restart State of Affairs on our show, right? Right.
I think so.
Yeah. So I'm sitting around like 3.3K MMR for my State of Affairs, and that's all I'm gonna say. It hurts too bad to say more. You know.
All right. Yep. I'm right there with you. I'm at the same 3.3. I have, as some of you may know, I've started a new Smurf after the Drunk Pudge fiasco. I'm back on the Tryhard horse. I'm doing it the right way. I've played 16 games on the new account, and I'm at very high skill, on the as a solo queue. So I'm okay with this. I'm very happy. I've gone 12-4. I'm feeling pretty good. Just playing my heroes, my Earthshakers, Slardars, Nature's Prophets, Tinies, and that's pretty much it. So it's been a good time.
So what happens to your previous Smurf when this Smurf comes? Does it get executed?
I think the previous Smurf was a great lesson in in
Smurfness,
in what not to do. And that is
not goof around on that account, etc.
you shouldn't be bribed into imbibing in alcoholic beverages and calibrating for your solo queue.
It worked though, didn't it? Can't say his plan didn't work.
It did. I mean, it worked for him. It didn't work for me. I lost about 1K right there.
Yeah, there you go.
That shit was rough. As a man who's aiming for that 4K, aiming to climb that 4K mountain, it hurt. But speaking of which, did you see that Reddit topic about the like playing habits of people who hit like the 1,000 mark on their MMRs? So if you hit like 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K, 5K, that flat number, that did you see that statistic that it showed?
I did not see that. That sounds really interesting though. Why do you expand on that?
So there's a post on Reddit on Monday about the way players play and like the amount of ranked matches they play, and it basically shows a steep drop off after the person hits whatever that flat number is, because they don't want to fall back to whatever the previous number was, right? So if I'm at 3.9K and then I get to 4K, I'm just going to stop playing ranked for a while. I just don't play nearly as much ranked as I used to. I'm just going to sit there at that 4K number so I can always say I'm a 4K player. It's pretty funny how like people like that mentality kind of just drives your motivation for playing, is like hitting that artificial number.
It's a badge by that point, and it's recognizable as a symbol among people who play the game with you. It's like, I'm this level of skilled. I'm not pro level. I'm not semi-pro. I'm just kind of I'm good at this game. And
it's not just 4K, but it was like if you were 2K, you'd stop playing. Right? Yeah. It didn't matter which it was. If you were 5K, you stopped playing because you wanted that nice, shiny, flat 5K number, which is pretty funny because it kind of reminds me of the way people view like sales in kind of the opposite sense, where if something is $40, I might not look at it, but if it's $39.99, it's in the 30s. Now we're talking, right? It just it plays on that weird, that like numerical game that people create in their heads. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting how that is perceived and recognized within that community. A lot of people wouldn't even listen to us in ways because we're, under 4K or whatever. But I think you can share knowledge in a flat way. I think it goes up and down and side to side in Dota 2 in a way, with how you can learn in literally every space of the game. So you can always share something that might be relevant to another party that wants to share that information with you. And this kind of brings us into the topic of the show, because I feel like fluidity and rigidity are some of the most interesting things to me about Dota. So we're going to talk about rigidity and item builds. We're going to talk about guides. When do you use them? Counter pickers we might get into a little bit. I wanted to bring up a few points about them. And just generally how to remain more fluid in your gameplay. So with that being said, Blue, do you want to launch into the discussions that you had planned, or would you like to?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Cool.
So the reason that we kind of bring up this topic is we were, I think it was you, me, and I think it was Roland, actually. We were playing a game. We were playing a game of ranked party, and I think it was maybe a few days ago. And he was playing Earthshaker, and as a guy who's an Earthshaker player, and I am always checking on other people's builds to see what they're doing out of curiosity most of the time. But of course it's Roland, so it's out of fear. I'm gonna flame him all day. Just
all
so
right.
so you know.
Plenty of chances for that.
But no. So yeah, I noticed he's playing a support Earthshaker. I was playing an offlane Slardar, and I think you must have been playing one of your signature, like a Tiny or something. And it was pretty far into the game, maybe 30 minutes or something like that. And we were up against a Clockwork, who, if you play against a lot of Clockworks, Force Staff is a very natural item, especially as an Earthshaker, because Clockwork, his battery assault completely negates your ability to use any of your spells as Earthshaker. Because of the cast time, it cancels every possible spell he has. So he
And
can't cast on,
positionally, it'll open you up anyway. In a lot of those
yeah,
situations, it's just
exactly.
it's
If
just
you
very
get,
good
if
against
you
him.
get caught in the cogs and the battery assault, you can force out, either you or your teammate. You can help out, and in general, Force Staff is an item you tend to get on Earthshaker because once you blink in and use your Echo Slam and all this other stuff, you need a way to get out of there. And typically, Force Staff is a decent way to do it. Some people get Glimmer Cape, some people get Shadow Blades to go in and blink out, stuff like that. But anyways, so I noticed, he went Arcane Boots, and then he got Blink, all very standard stuff, and then he went Aghanims. And I said, oh, how come you're going Aghanims? He's like, well, I always go Aghanims. And so it made me think about this topic in general because it's something that that I feel like everyone at some point struggles with, especially depending on the hero you play, right? I feel like if you asked me to play Pugna, I would run into the same problem where I'll build something and I'll go because it was in the guide or because I've always built it and it just feels right, right? But having an additional reason or an additional answer, based on your decision, I think is something that I think a lot of people can learn. And so this kind of rigidity in the build and strictly adhering to maybe your own personal guide or adhering to, some Leaf Eater guide that is just kind of a standard by the book way to play a hero in any given match, is not a healthy way to go about it. Sometimes it is a healthy way to go about it when it's your first, second, third, fourth, fifth time playing a hero,
Yep.
or you're just starting, or you're just new to the game. So I kind of wanted to talk about situations where you want to listen to guides, where you want to adhere to rigidity, or where you want to kind of spread your wings and think more critically about the minute to minute scenarios, right?
I like the example you've laid out because it explains a lot of builds that people do at our level and below. So everything from like mid 3K below is they just have a blanket build that works maybe half the time, and so they'll just use they'll like flip a coin pretty much, rather than looking at the problems of what the enemy's building or what heroes they're up against or like what's going to be best. They just build that hero's like vanilla build, and then they hope that it works out. They hope that their play will carry them through. And that's really a big risk when you think about it. When you can maximize the efficiency of what you're building to directly deal with the problems at hand, and that's what I look at every game as, is a problem to be solved. And if you're not looking at it to solve it with your builds or how you're skilling your hero, then like you're definitely minimizing your effect on the game at a certain point, right?
Absolutely. I think I think you touched on something really important, which is looking at the enemy's items. I think that's something easy to just kind of gloss over, right? But it's so vital to the way you build. There's actually a really cool post on Reddit, a guy talking about getting out of the 2K bracket. Really, it should apply to any bracket. And one of the top things he mentioned was checking your enemy's items. It was always, this should be a habit. Figure out what they are building and how they are skilling and build the items to counter them before they build theirs. And he adds, fuck your hero guide. Your job isn't to make your hero unstoppable. It's to make it easy to stop their heroes. So
who's this poster so we can credit them?
It's Kazeko. Kazeko.
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely I agree with that sentiment
nice,
a lot.
succinct way to put it.
Yeah, it really is.
And so I feel like a good example is something like you see a build, right? You're anti-mage. You're like, okay, I have, my treads, Battle Fury, Manta Style. It says next I should get Butterfly. Okay, then if you were thinking critically, you'd go over, you'd check to see the other, teams, and you say who's a natural MKB carrier here, because that would prevent me from deciding to get the Butterfly, right?
Yep.
It's very straight. That's a very straightforward and obvious example for a lot of people, but for others it might not be. So just taking that extra split second to decide, okay, who here would be building an MKB, or who here already has one, or who here might be able to transition into one, is very important kind of questions to ask yourself as you play the game.
Yeah, there's this big part of the game you're kind of leaving on the table when you do the general thing, or if you don't at least just do that mental checklist. And some people just don't know at skill brackets. You're interacting with the game early on, and so you're getting wrecked by this stuff once or twice before you say, what can I build to not make that PA seems so OP or whatever, and you find out about the MKB, you find out about those interactions. Guides don't necessarily teach you about those interactions, and that would be one of my big criticisms about them, is you just kind of do it, and you're supposed to observe a certain way of playing that build, but there's all these mitigating factors, right? There's all these different things that people are doing to change up their builds at later times that if you just have it mechanically built in to not think about the process, and you just have one build in your mind, then you're going to be hugely disadvantaged.
Right. You're running down a tunnel expecting to hit the same exit every time, when in reality it's like fucking an Indiana Jones tomb, There's just things sliding all over that can murder you, gigantic boulders rolling down hills.
That's a good analogy for Dota.
Okay.
It's like a Mayan temple or whatever.
Right? It's just a temple of doom that you gotta get the fuck out of there. So and each game is a different temple, so you need to approach it that way. And if you don't, you're in trouble. But I mean, at the same time, we've harped on a lot of reasons why rigidity is very bad. But to its credit, there's still some good reasons that you should follow those guides, right? I mean, when you were starting out, when we were starting out, because we started around the same time, a few years back. I mean, I don't even remember. Were there a lot of really good guides? I know the standard ones were terrible. There was
just the default guide. When I first started,
bad.
You couldn't load them in and be like, tell you what to build. Like, I saw Roland using that when he started, and I was like, what in the good God are you doing, man? And I walked in, and I was like, what the fuck?
How do you do it?
That person's playing the game for you, is what I told him. And I'm like, you got to figure that shit out on your own. Like, I'd alt-tab and go to, Dota buff guides and shit. And, look at the most built and be like, Oh,
yeah,
like,
Dota Fire?
Yeah, just Dota Fire shit. And just read it and be like, this is my guide. Terrible grammar, but I'm like, this is gold,
Yeah. And some of those builds were just flat out terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know why you're building what you're building. You don't I'd read some of the guide, but I was like, oh, the grammar's terrible. Then I just stopped reading it.
Or there'd be the comments like, your build is shit, you are shit. And you're like, I don't know any of these guys. Who would I listen to? Why would I take that guy for his word, or why would I take the guy who's calling him shit for his word? Like you're just lost in the wilderness. But thankfully, there's this built-in system that we have that allows people to give a rating for a build, right? And that's the coolest thing to me, is that you can have, an anonymous rating for each and every build, and you can give a thumbs up and thumbs down for builds that you either like or don't like. And within those builds, it shows different ways to play the heroes. There's a Venge carry build, but there's also a Venge support build. There's a Venge mid build. There's just all different ways to play these different heroes, and there's so many guides out there to tailor to the way you want to play. So I think maybe the first sin people make without realizing it is that there's a lot of great guides. The guides might not be the problem. It's the people not choosing the right guide for the right situation.
Yeah, and some guides are just outdated, if you think about it. Like, if you were to look up a Void guide pre his change, then you have a completely different situation than what you have now, and you can make that point with a lot of other heroes. And even just looking up guides for, Troll, it's all the way back from when he was really, really strong in the laning phase, and they're relying on that with the guide that they're writing. They're just, you don't need anything. You need, one tango... one shared tango from your team and one Ironwood branch, and you can win lane. And he was really strong, but he's not that way anymore. So you might need a little bit more protection, a little bit more regen in those starting items, and you also may need to skill differently. So you really need to make sure that when you're researching, you're doing something that you understand what you're looking at. You know what I mean? It sounds so banal in a way and obvious to say this, but you need to understand that you're looking at something that's current to the meta, and otherwise you need to understand that it might not be current and that you might be looking at something not made for the situation you're in. If you're playing a 5 support Venchi or something, you don't want to be building Mask of Madness and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or that's where you want to check and see stuff like, does it say 6.86 on there? Was it last updated? Was it last updated May 2014? Okay, maybe you might want to skip that because it's kind of missing a few items. or
Sometimes it doesn't matter though. I mean, like with some heroes it doesn't, but at the same time, some heroes it really, really does. When you're trying to skill Void's new ability, like his backtrack, and why am I not blocking this damage? You know, like as you're just getting nuked in the face.
But even for those heroes where you might think it might be super obvious what you need to do, I think a good one that we could look at again is anti-mage, right? Like everyone since I've started playing Dota has gone. You build Battle Fury and anti-mage, you get power treads. And then from there,
not in that order though.
Ursi
scolded me in one game. He was like,
"Yes."
I was like,
treads is much.
I had brown boots and I was going straight for my Battle Fury, gonna get it at like 11 minutes.
You are a greedy son of a bitch. Yeah. I even saw you in a tiny game a few days ago. Just go straight like Quelling Blade, Gauntlet of Strength, Tangos. I would never have the balls to do that, man. I'd be going Stout Shield all goddamn day. It was I
like quelling on tiny, and I do it because I can escape the avalanche almost all the time in early game. I just see him, and I've gotten like, it's like I see two ships fly in. It's like, and I just unlock the avalanche right on two guys' faces. That didn't sound right, but
I mean, you just said you avalanched all over two guys' faces. So I just wanted to leave you out there and just let you keep rolling.
Yeah, this is gonna get real interesting. But yeah, I do play greedy builds.
Software porn episode.
But I feel like I have to when I go drums early, and that's why I went the gauntlet and not the stout.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, for me, I don't know. Stout Shield is just so much value, especially on a guy who's got 0 armor. But anyways, we're turning this into the tiny build show.
Yeah.
But
not this show.
But it's a good example, right? You approach him this way, and you have your reasons for doing it, and I approach him a different way, and I have my reasons for doing it, and they're both valid reasons, and we've thought each of them out. So I think as long as we both keep that approach and keep an open mind to other approaches, or to see what people who are successful at the heroes a lot of the time, how they do it, right? I feel like that's an important factor that we always need to consider, right? I think there was a guy I was listening to, and he was talking about the art of mastering anything, and it kind of starts with mastering. With repeating what the most popular and successful way it's done. You need to be able to repeat over and over and over again and understand all the reasons why each of those steps is taken to do that, to perform that thing. Whatever that task is, whether it's playing the piano or playing a new hero or, giving a speech, doesn't matter. Same concept applies to really anything.
And art, painting and such.
Painting,
you look at modernists and stuff like that. Like they weren't just doing that. I don't know. Weird aside, but you see it in art as well.
And after that phase, and here's where it gets tricky: is when you know that you've moved on, when you've officially quote unquote mastered that very popular and understood, generally practiced method. Is when you can get creative
and be the individualist you always wanted to be,
and be and move and be free flowing and lack and kind of experimental, not necessarily choosing a different build each time, but trying a little tweak on something, right?
But understanding, hopefully this is what happens, which is how it was for me. Like I'd do those builds, and I'd alt tab out, so sometimes things would get mixed up, but I'd start to see, because it wasn't programmed into my game, where I would make mistakes. And then I could correct it, and then I was asking myself why that was a mistake. And then I would see, oh, well, it was a real mistake not to skill Avalanche there again instead of Craggy, because Craggy's not going to be that important. I don't want to get engaged on. Like I should have skilled Toss or Avalanche again. You know what I mean? And like when you make those mistakes, you start to see what the abilities do on an independent front outside of a guide. What I worry about with these things that plug into Steam or whatever, and it like glows to show you where to plug your skill points, like that's just automated and shit, man. Like it's go do your research, understand what works for you, try it. If it doesn't work, try something new. Understand the old way. But with these builds, it's like I feel like it might turn people off to heroes if it's just like, well, I did everything they told me to do and it was still awful. Like,
it is definitely a crutch. It is. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It is a major crutch for people who. I feel like there's two kinds of people when they start out, and it's both flawed. Both of them are kind of flawed in their own sense, and but they both might be right at different times. Right? There's two people when they start. There's one who thinks that they've got it all figured out, and they don't want to listen to anybody. All right.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even bother with in-game guides. They just do their own thing, on the seat of their pants. They're kind of flying, so they'll be those guys who will just go like Battle Fury bounty hunter
Nice.
because his Janata plus the Battle Fury means you could cleave. Oh, that's so
Deso
cool.
Pudge.
Deso, but right, like these guys who just do wonky, crazy shit, flies off the wall, and then maybe at some point they come to discover what is the generally practice build, and maybe that's optimal for them, or maybe they've figured out their own style and it works for them. That's great. Then there's the other types, the types who only like will click on a build and be like, that's my build now and forever, the end, and you just kind of, like you said, you just kind of follow along the little happy little trail that it puts you on, and then you realized, oh shit, I misskilled once, but the yellow thing is hitting, like say I've done this before. I remember like a couple of years ago, I would do stuff like I'd follow along the path, and then I'd hit level 5 and I would misskill on the I'd hit W instead of E. The next skill, it'll tell me to hit E. Right? It'll say, oh, you need, because it thinks you've already moved on. And then I hit that because I follow back along the guide, and the guide's fucked because I should have been hitting my ultimate.
Yeah.
Like it's like you take one misstep, you fall one step outside of the realm of the guide, and you can't get back in. Like you're like
I didn't
off
know
the
that.
roller
I've
coaster
never
ride.
used one, honestly. So
Yeah.
like all this criticism, you might consider me ignorant. You might consider me really ignorant. You might consider me stupid. Whatever. It's not something I will ever use. And I almost said that
True.
and I will never have my children use them, but I don't have kids. But if I did,
That's a hard stance on
if
it.
I did, they would not use it because it's just one of those things that I feel like it makes you lazy, and a lazy Dota player is no good. God knows I
that's
was
where I
lazy for
disagree
the
with
longest time, and to ever improve, you need to not be lazy. Is what I'm starting to realize. You have to learn all those things that you're like, oh, awesome, this gets me kills. It's like, not forever, bud. Like, eventually it stopped, like, the fun runs out, and you just have to play good, organized.
See, this is where
Dota.
I disagree with you to an extent. I think
Let's do's it.
like if you are just starting out and you are picking a hero and you don't know, you like barely understand how that hero plays, maybe you played against him a few times, and let's say you're playing, I'm just going to use any hero, it doesn't really matter. Let's say you're playing Lion. Okay.
Mid?
All right. No, just Lion support. That's the
okay.
standard build, right? You're a Lion, you're going to click support, going to click the Leaf Eater build 6.86, up to date, ready to go. All right, it says to build, Tranquil Boots, Blink, Force Staff, maybe Bracer or Urn in the maybe like the situational items category, right? If you do that, there's a much better chance that you're going to have success and have fun in the game when you're just starting out. As opposed to, okay, wow, look at this fucking laundry list of items that I don't really know how they interact with each other.
There's some heroes where it's like situational items, every single item, and you're just like, okay, well, what's the situation,
Right.
But
even then, even if it's not like that, and you haven't played Anti-Mage a lot, and you're just starting out, you have no idea why Battle Fury is good on him. Maelstrom could be good on him, right? That means I can attack faster.
Yep.
Or, Vanguard could be good on him because he's not very tanky, so I'm going to make him more tanky. I think that's something a lot of people get this misconception of. Is like, I need to make up for my character's weaknesses as opposed to making whatever they do good even more good, grammar
exactly.
aside.
You're trying to improve the strengths and make up the weaknesses if you can, but I think you're trying to more so improve the strengths. Because trying to go back and make up for your hero's weakness is not always such a good plan, in my experience. Especially with someone, like, if you don't think it out critically in the way that he has a blink or something, or he gets a blink, because you don't want to be engaging anyway, right?
Right. And the beauty of some of those items is if you find that there's an item that does both of those things, that thing is the jackpot, right? Like, there's very few circumstances when Assault Cuirass on Tiny is not a good item when you have Ags, right?
I love it, and I hate when other people want to buy it.
right? Very few circumstances when that's not a good item. And even if someone already has it, it's still kind of a pretty good item, right? I mean, it still offers attack speed, still offers a lot of armor.
Probably
and it's
rather
not-
get a moon shard and like a Shiva's or something though, or like I don't know, a hyperstone and a Shiva's.
Yeah, you probably might go Moonshard first, and if someone already has AC, but it's a guy who has like 6 armor at the end of the game.
He's just
which
a
is
rock
terrible.
man, dude.
Yeah.
He's who I identify with most and who I would probably want to chill most.
There you go.
I'd ride around on him probably.
You would? That
Yeah.
doesn't sound comfortable at all, man.
Hey, we'd figure something out.
I'm a hop a ride on Murano, okay?
And I just pour beer in his mouth and
Hop-
stuff, and he'd
hop
be
on the
like,
back.
"That's good."
Oh God, you gonna bro out with him?
Yeah.
It's all right. I'll hang out with my girl.
Sorry, that was a bad aside. But I want to talk about another way because it's another option we haven't really discussed, and that's watching video guides, which I have
Yes.
done a lot of. And I will say it here. I made it sound like I made my way through 1,000 steps just using the basic guide because I did on most heroes. But a big thing too is I just like fall asleep and watch YouTube videos of Pudge. I always call him that. Purge. Purge.
Oh, Purge.
Yeah, Purge playing any hero, that I was interested in at the time. Because it really shows you the hero's arc. It shows you exactly like the power level you're going to be hitting. And so that's interesting to see. It's interesting to see him start because he usually goes pretty general. But you can watch many other people play any hero. There's so many Let's Plays out there of any hero. I think those are invaluable resources.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Merlini's another good source for that kind of stuff. When you watch his stream, and he's just doing regular solo queue, he's just constantly going over what he's doing and why he's doing it. Why
Even
this pick
Gods
is
is
a good
good
pick.
at that too. Like there's so many of those streamers that are they're invaluable resources really to you learning the game.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to recognize when someone has optimized a build, rather than saying, "Oh, well, that's harder to do," or it's easier. I think it's easier to play someone whose job it is to play Dota, like to copy their build and be successful, than it is to try and make your own, right? It's easier to play Mozart and sound good as opposed to playing your own composition, right? It just is natural. It's people who are naturally gifted and creative and have played this game thousands more hours than we ever will.
The difference in the analogy, however, though, is like every concert hall doesn't change. And I feel like with Dota, every concert hall does change, and their optimized build might not be
right
ideal
but I'm
for
talking
your
about,
specific game. You know what I mean?
Right, but you're kind of splitting hairs there because I
suppose.
I'm talking about picking. Like if you have a build that you use 30% of the time versus the other 4 or 5 builds that you might consider as well, right?
Yeah.
If all things being like quote unquote standard, which I realize in Dota there is rarely such a thing, but if you have your standard set of heroes who don't hard counter you all the time, and this build might work a lot more often than all the other builds, right? We're talking a percentage game. So not necessarily. So you're right. It's not saying that this build is the Bible, but it's also, agreeing that all things being considered, we know this build has proven success.
Yeah. It's like
and there's a reason for it.
We mentioned it before as a concept of having like tools in your tool belt to kind of deal with every situation. This is another concept of that, but it's more of a meta concept of recognizing threats and being able to properly react, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I find it really interesting to watch the videos and streams because you get to see someone do it, and I'm a very observant person when I learn. So you show me a build breakdown and I can kind of go through it in my head, but you throw like 9 other heroes in the game and it becomes harder to do that. It becomes kind of pointless. I'm not thinking about the logic to the build. I'm more so just seeing if it works like as a reaction. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm experimenting rather than researching. I guess is the best way to put it.
And the problem with experiments is that there's so few control groups you have in a game of Dota because there's so many damn variables. It's your skill, how you are at the time of the day, how your enemy team is, the composition of both sides.
The variables. That's what
playing.
I love the game. It makes me love the game.
It's an infinite number of variables, but that's where you have to kind of that's what makes a good player, great, or a player improve, is knowing what the inferences are to make and making them, and then changing playstyles based off that, or critically, doing some self, some self criticism, is looking at your playstyle. Maybe, like just this last year, I realized I just don't farm enough, and almost every hero I play, I don't farm enough. I want to fight. I just constantly want to fight, and that's an issue. So I address it. I look every time I get a twinge in my head. I should fight here. I go, wait 5 seconds, think about that, and then make the decision. Right, just giving myself a little bit of time to realize that my instinct might be wrong here, and that I can improve based on that. And so I know that kind of is a little off topic, but it is kind of the
Not
same
necessarily.
Rigidity in your instincts.
It bleeds
as well
in.
as,
It
you know,
bleeds
your,
in
your
perfectly
items.
to that topic that we discussed. I don't know, many episodes now ago, and that was game sense. And I think the instinct does kind of go into that, because even the best players can have their instincts questioned, and I feel like that's true with this too. You can want to go a certain item because you think it's going to shut down a hero, and maybe they get Lincolns, and it shuts down that Yules or something immediately, and you're just like, shit. And
Yeah.
you didn't see that, so your instincts were wrong in that sense, that it was going to be really good to catch the Weaver out before you could time lapse or something like that. But to give yourself that time, I think that's a really, really good topic to take up the mid section of this conversation, and that's being able to stop and question your own logic when you're under duress, and be like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff. Is there something I was wrong on? Like you said, you took 5 seconds to see if you wanted to engage. That's fucking awesome. That's brilliant, in my opinion, because by that point, you either see that there's more of them, or you see that you should engage. And so you engage, And so to give yourself that time, and this goes back to a Tryhard Tuesdays concept that we kind of clarified many episodes ago, and that was like having that binary of ones and zeros in your head. Should I engage? Yes or no? Do they have this? Do they have MKB on their team? 1 or 0? And you just kind of mark that in your head as you go along, and that will give you the idea of how to react. And this is no different in terms of instincts. So that's an interesting tie-in, I think.
Maybe binary. Maybe to edit it.
Yeah,
post-mortem.
that's still from my head. It's not completely fleshed out.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we did say it was kind of binary. I think maybe to add, we might need to add that additional option is like wait a little bit. Give it 5 seconds and think, or wait it out, because I see a lot of people in the even when we had that game where it was with the gank squad, the quote unquote the gank squad.
Oh yeah, gank squad.
I noticed
TM.
this. We played when we were playing. It was a lot of times someone would like TP to my lane. I was the off laner. I was an off lane Sardar. Someone would TP to my lane, whether it was Roland or Cyphus or someone. And I go, "Why'd you TP?" He's like, "Oh, I thought a fight was breaking out." I think it's a perfect example of it. Is to say, instead of teleporting immediately, check the map and wait an extra 3 to 4 seconds to make sure a fight is actually breaking out. Because I've been as guilty of this as anyone too. Is I will teleport as soon as I see the possibility of a fight breaking out.
Because you want to be there. You want to be there before
exactly.
It breaks out. But
don't want to get flamed for being the guy who wasn't there. But if you just wait the extra 7 seconds, turns out maybe
they went back.
60% of the time there is no fight. Guess what? You just wasted a teleport, and you can't be there
and
to
you're
save
soaking
the other
experience.
person.
Yeah. I don't know. And then you can always damage control in such a situation, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
you can always set up something later on.
Of course, but it's still like you're still kind of trying to compensate for something that you didn't have to do, for inefficient movements on the map.
So this has been an interesting subsection B. We got to get back to the original topic.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, that's something we could go on for another 30 minutes. I think that's
totally. You're right.
It's another episode of content, but that's an interesting subsection B. Let's head back up to the conversation and kind of talk more about. We've talked about the pros and cons of guides. There's other ways we learn in the game, and that's information from people around us. But I would also like to talk about kind of using counter pickers, because I know it's something that a lot of people use, including myself in solo, at times, because you want to have that pick. And I think it's a good idea to use them at times. But I also think, like, if you're in a certain scenario, you don't want to be using them. Like if you're given the chance to like draft for a team or something. I think it's kind of ridiculous just to ban based on that because you might not see the combo they're going for or something like that. But in solo play and stuff like that, I'm for using them in ways, honestly, as a tool that just might work in giving you statistical information about that game. It's pretty cheesy. It's more cheesy than I'm used to getting with games, but I don't know. I'd like a discussion about it.
Yeah, I am firmly on the opposite side of this because to me, counterpicker's doing the thinking for you. And so if you have a counterpicker with you constantly, I guess it's okay, but you're still not considering, are any of those players really good with that hero that they may or may not pick that you are countering, or B, what phase the pick. Actually, it does account for what phase the pick it is, and I think the big thing for me is counterpicker does the thinking for you, and that to me goes against what I really like about Dota, is where you kind of learn, and it makes you learn by showing rather than telling. So telling me, right, that Silencer is a great pick against
this is all from Dota.
Storm Spirit.
Dota buff, by the way, though. It just takes pub game information and looks at that pick versus another pick.
Sure. I just think any Dota pick, doesn't matter whether it's Dota pick or
it comes from statistical
whatever.
information, so it's not like purely just like this is good against this. And early on in the days of Dota, I did run into sites like that a lot, where it was just like, this is good against this. And it just like was lore, you know what I mean? That you just kind of like were lucky enough to be privy to at a certain point. And after being counterpicked myself, it felt like, and not understanding the counters, I started using a counterpicker. But I don't typically use it when I play with teams because it's like, we'll have a plan, you know what I mean? But as for like solo, it's so hard to like even get a pick where you have a decent lane, it feels like, that I wanted to have the highest statistical pick. And I feel like that's where I've gotten lazy in my play and my thinking is knowing all the hero synergies and knowing the really good hard counters and everything like that. You know,
that's where I feel like you learn a lot faster and a lot more by just playing the game and feeling out
baptism by fire
and keeping your eyes and also keeping your eyes open as to what is synergizing really well. I mean, I just saw a game today with Wagamama playing Pudge and this other guy picking Undying, and I'm like, in a vacuum, maybe the odds say that those are two good picks together, because in matches where they both have been on the same team, it's great. When you see it on the, when you see it in the game, second to second play, you realize it's a fucking horrible pick for either of them, because the Undying is constantly, cock blocking the Pudge hooks with his tombstone zombies. Stuff like that just doesn't come across in a counter pick or in any kind of statistical analysis.
No, that's something that
that's
a
people
really
can easily
good point.
Fall into.
That's a really good point. You don't look at hero synergies, and you don't look at those non-number things. Like you can see that some people won, but you don't necessarily know why, and that doesn't mean that they're always perfectly countered. And that's the thing about Dota. I mean, that's another interesting thing. I feel like we give you guys so much I guess it's transparent advice at times. It just feels like you can't really hold on to it very hard, but that's Dota. It feels like so much is doing it. But counterpickers are kind of like that as well. You're completely right. And that's the negative side, would be that how heroes interact together, all that stuff that makes up a game of Dota is kind of left completely off the table in favor of like a cold analysis. Yeah,
maybe the issue I take with it, I mean, along with the fact that I think you just learn more on your own and seeing why it works, is maybe not necessarily just seeing, this has a 60% win rate when the two are combined, is knowing how. If I put it together that Witch Doctor and Faceless Void in a vacuum are good together. Why are they good together? Well, I need to take, the peanut butter and the jelly and combine them and look and go, and taste and go, that's why. That's fucking awesome, because Faceless Void Chrono plus Witch Doctor Ultimate, right? But,
yeah, there you go.
You need to play it to know why that works, or in your head you might not be thinking critically enough to go, this is why it works. I mean, that one is a really, really obvious combination, but there's so many out there that aren't as obvious, but for some reason they work and synergize well together. And so when you play that, you figure it out. So maybe try that combination once with a counter picker and see if it works. or why it works or why maybe it doesn't work for you. But
And they don't.
I
They
don't know.
don't always work. I mean, it's not something that like guarantees you a good pick even
Sure.
because for all you know, all it takes is a stun to catch you out and you're dead. You know, if they have good organization or whatever and you're off alone. So some of that stuff also doesn't matter. If you have bad habits as a player, like sure you can get a good pick, but you're still going to get shut down by superior players in ways.
Or
So,
yeah, or it assumes that if whoever you're playing with is going to adhere to the kind of standard Dota buff way of playing, the way the majority plays. When in reality, maybe this Legion Commander is not going to go offlane. Maybe she's just going to go jungle. So you can't even synergize with her in a dual offlane kind of thing, right? So
jungle.
it makes right the jungle. Oh, that if you want to learn Dota, don't pick a jungler.
Welcome to the jungle, babe. You've got throne games.
Oh God!
Thanks for laughing.
It was funny. It was a laugh cough because I was kind of dying inside. What's funny is when we were talking about items that we really liked, and I named Iron Talon as one I really liked because it allows people to jungle who normally couldn't or might not be inclined to. I take that back. Fucking no more of this goddamn Legion Commander jungle first always bullshit.
Iron Talon.
Iron Talon,
just
that's
scraping
it.
away.
Scraping.
Yeah, she's
Iron
so
Talon
good in lane
scrapes
too.
the
That's what
bottom barrel.
bugs me.
Yeah.
She's such a good hero in lane with someone
yeah.
else. Like, just press the attack. It's all
She's
good,
got
man.
Great sustain.
Yeah.
She has a really good nuke. I mean, she has really high attack speed, incredible base damage.
Whoever ran a Legion in the jungle to make this such an often occurrence? Because I see it all the time too.
Oh, it's a natural thing with her third skill, the one that gives you the lifesteal, the moment of courage. So I don't know. It's just I don't like it. I just don't.
Yeah, me neither.
But everyone knows how I don't like how that hero works. So I'll just move on from that one.
You love Necro though. Jokes.
Necro jungle. Oh,
yeah. Necro ancient jungle, dude. Now you can do.
Rest in
I'm
peace.
joking. Okay, so I think that wraps it up pretty well for the body of our discussion. We got to talk about the pros and cons of each side, and not be so concrete. But it's hard because some of these things might help other people. Other people learn differently. I know I'm more of like an observation person. I like to watch someone do something before I try to do it, and so the video guys help me. Some of those counterpicker, like statistical information, like you could see why those numbers were that way at your skill level. And it sorts it by game, normal, high, or very high. And so that's very interesting to me, anyway, from just like kind of being an analytical individual, I guess, is seeing information like that. And so like that's why I used it, because it's like, I have science on my side. But there are also cons there. So the best thing to do is just think out your own builds. Think it out, understand what you're doing, and really attempt to look at the game like a problem. What they're building are their item timings going to be a problem? How can you mitigate that problem with what you build or how you skill your guy or your hero? And that would be my like final note on it. What's your final note on it, Bill? Blue?
I think for me, you took a really good concept and that is guides are great when you understand the reasons behind why they're great, like why that particular guide is so successful, or why it's generally considered to be the kind of standard build for a hero, is when you know why that's the standard build. Why is he picking this item? Why does that item synergize with that hero's abilities? And this all sounds very obvious and kind of speaks for itself, but you need to actually see it in action. And I think that was a good example you used when you say that you learned by observing. I feel like if people observed more before they just checked that checkbox that says standard lane 6.86 guide for hero XYZ, they'd be a lot better off because they'd know why people pick those items, when they pick them, and what the situation is for picking up those situational items. So, guides are great when they're used in the proper context, when you're a new player or when you're playing a new hero. Flexibility is great after you've acclimated yourself to the game, after you've kind of hit that stage of mastering something where you've repeated over and over to know why something is the standard and to be able to branch out from it after that. I feel like after that point, when you experiment, when you're trying out to see what your personal style most favors, you can become a much better player because you're not just you kind of take that whole part of the game and you kind of just compartmentalize it, and it's just instinct at that point, you know.
It's like the burning build, you know, like on anti-mage. It's the 1-1-1. You just have one skill point in each skill and then 2 in stats and then the quick battle fury and all that. It's like that's just kind of become urban legend, and sometimes builds are so good that they just become that. You know what I mean? They become the hero in weird ways. But
And
I
sometimes
agree with you completely.
you just need to know why.
Yeah, you need to know why, and you need to understand how you can test the rigidity of that structure, right? Of that hero. What can you get away with doing different, I guess. But you don't learn that until you learn how to play the instrument, right?
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, but we're going to wrap up there. I feel like everyone got everything they wanted to say out. That was a good conversation. So we're going to move into the item build of the week and close out the show. We're going to talk Faceless Void builds because he's new. He's had a slight rework with his E ability. He looks good ever since his look got updated, so he feels topical. What builds do you want to look at today, Blue?
Yeah, speaking of flexibility in your builds, Void is a hero that has had a rework that's so big that the entire way the hero is played has been altered. A lot of people argue that he really isn't a safe lane carry anymore. And personally, I haven't played him a lot, so I can't speak for that. But from what I've seen of a lot of other, a few other players, I feel like you could play him off lane. I've seen him played mid.
Really?
Safe lane, because he can be a playmaker at this point. His ability to escape, his time dilation, his W, the new ability he has, can really.
What did they do to my baby boy, man?
Up.
I liked him as a fucking carry. I really did.
Well, if you like him as a carry, try this build out.
Okay.
So it's the Wagamama build from a few days back. I'll post a link to it in the show notes, but it's him playing Faceless Void in the carry lane. He goes power treads into Vanguard, which again is different, very different than how you normally pick him. So he goes power treads into Vanguard, and then from there he goes into a Radiance, which to me is very interesting. And you ask, why would he
backtrack, dude?
Why would he go Radiance? Because he has the what's his Q? The Q is reworked.
Time walk
is reworked to where any damage he took in the last 2 seconds is automatically reversed.
Yeah.
It's like a mini Weaver ultimate.
I like they're doing more with that because they were trying to with the slow behind it,
Yeah.
So now they've added more to that. They've fleshed out the idea more. I like it.
So he's got some added survivability. He's got some added maneuverability. And he kind of has some pseudo tankiness with that, as long as he isn't silenced. So he goes into a Radiance build, which lets him farm fast, obviously. The Vanguard to tank up and fight early and often during that. And then he moves into items like Assault Cuirass and also Aghanims. Obviously with BKB later on, just because BKB is pretty essential on a lot of carries. But he goes Assault Cuirass for your kind of more standard Faceless Void, attack speed oriented shit. So with that combination, he's pretty hard to stop. I mean, the Radiance damage, being able to chase heroes down with the new Time Walk.
And at this point, you're just like
build.
You're an ult hero, right? You're going around throwing chronos up, and you're setting up good fights for your team, and you're also doing damage.
Well, I think you are and you aren't, because your Time Walk now has the reduced mana cost.
Yeah.
So you can use that a hell of a lot more than you ever could.
To get out, right? Though I mean,
get it. Well, you can use it to get in. You can use it to get out because the cooldown has changed.
What is it now?
It's 6 seconds at level 4 on a 40 mana cost.
Interesting. So that's different. Yeah. It kind of makes him a utility hero. I think that's where we'll see him land.
Yeah.
Because you kind of saw when Void was being played professionally a few years ago, he was played in the off lane, and he seemed to have a little bit of success there. But you haven't seen him since, really. I mean, he's not used as a carry. Although Backtrack was quite good, I guess, but I didn't think people had that big of a problem with it. I guess they did. So
yeah. You've seen people going like blink on him.
Yeah.
So they can blink in, chrono, or they can blink in and then time walk and time or blink in and use the time dilation ability and freeze cooldowns. I mean, and that also adds a slow per cooldown that it stops.
It screams utility offlane to me, though. It really does. And
oh, totally.
Hopefully.
But this is a kind of a crazy wonky build that Waga has gone.
And he always plays mid pretty much in every pub I've seen him in anyway.
He plays mid or carry most of the time. You're right, yeah.
But guys, you heard it here first with interesting Void builds going over. I'd like to observe Void as he goes on. Maybe we'll see him picked in the qualifiers for Shanghai or something like that. I don't know. I'd like to see that, see where people go with him. But I'm going to close out the show now unless you have anything more to add, Blue.
No, that's it.
All right. I am the Grand Wazoo here with .p, and you can find us on Twitter at .p_show. That's for the overarching show Twitter. We'll be sure to see you there, or you can reach me at .p_wazoo. Look for us every week. Wednesday show, Wannabe Wednesdays is what their working title is, or whatever, maybe their real title. With Korean Barbecue and Wood Shrew is a great show to listen to. It's been awesome. They did a great patch notes analysis. Check out our sistership, Theorycraft Thursdays on Thursday. What about you, Blue? Where can people reach you?
You can find me at Mr. Blue at Mr. Blue 22 on Twitter. You'll also find the YouTube channel at youtube.com/.ptv1. And that's all I got.
All right. Wow. Very, very, you're always plugging the YouTube. You're pushing for it. I love it.
I push the YouTube, man. I love me the YouTubes.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been great talking to you about this stuff. We will have more content, more changes to the show coming up soon. And thanks for joining us, guys. Stay hard and stay classy.